Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today, we've got some more 2A news for you, and this is actually quite a shocker for me, the news that we are going to be reporting here today. And I'm sure over the last couple of days, many of you have heard about the situation with Matt Hoover and Justin Irving. We are going to go into a bit more detail here. I've got a great article from Ammo Land. Mr. John Crump always bringing some great thoughts into the situation and giving us something to go on here. So I am going to go ahead and refer to John Crump's article here, and we'll get into this. And this is pretty terrible. What has happened to the Hoover family is definitely a tragedy, and it goes to show, I think, once you wind up seeing exactly what this is about, you're going to be quite surprised that, words are literal violence to these people. And, simply saying something is a machine gun makes it a machine gun, or it's just crazy. So let's get into this. Justin Irvin and Matthew Hoover of CRS Firearms found guilty in AutoKeyCard case. Wow, it's a crazy turn of events there. In the AutoKeyCard case, a jury found Matthew Hoover, better known as CRS Firearms on YouTube, and Justin Irvin guilty. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives charged the men with violating the National Firearms Act of 1934 for selling machine guns and conspiracy. Irvin faced an additional charge of structuring. The case stems from Mr. Irving selling a metal card with an image inspired by a lightning link etched into it. Irvin sold the cards as a novelty and contracted Mr. Hoover to promote the card on his popular YouTube channel. The ATF arrested Irvin in April of 2021 and charged him with transferring unregistered machine guns. Mr. Irvin was denied bail and has been locked up since his arrest. Hoover used his platform to raise money in Irvin's legal defense. The ATF viewed the fundraising activities as conspiracy and accused the men of running a criminal enterprise. Holy crap. A year after Irvin was arrested, the ATF raided Hoover's house and took him into custody. This time, a Wisconsin judge released Hoover on his own recognizance, saying he didn't believe the YouTuber was a flight risk or a danger to society. The U.S. Attorney General pushed for Hoover to be kept in custody, but her arguments fell short. The trial ran for 2 weeks. Ammo Land News recapped the first week. This week, 6 of Hoover's viewers testified. 4 of the witnesses stated that they bought the AutoKeyCard after seeing it on the CRS Firearms YouTube channel, but never intended to cut it out. Another witness nervously testified he bought the item to make a machine gun and accused CRS Firearms of encouraging his viewers to break the law. The final witness stated he was driving when he heard automatic gun fire. He said he pulled over and found 3 men in a field. The men had 2 AutoKeyCards. One was cut out and one wasn't. The men gave him both because they couldn't get it to work. The man is a machinist and figured he could use his skills to get the item to function. After hours of trying and failing, he threw away the cut-out AutoKeyCard. When he saw the arrest of Irving, he contacted a lawyer that arranged for him to turn it into the ATF. Boy, this is just getting worse and worse as we go. Wow. The ATF examiners also testified and showed a 10-second low-quality video of an AR-15 firing automatically with a cutout AutoKeyCard. There was no video before or after the firing. When pressed, the ATF admitted they could only get one of the 3 AutoKeyCards they possessed to work. They also admitted to jamming the AutoKeyCard into the firearm to create hammer follow. This action is similar to where the ATF ruled a sliver of metal to be a machine gun. And what he's referring to there is, a sliver of metal causing the trigger to not reset or to malfunction in some way that would cause it to fire in a way inconsistent with the way it was originally designed to do. They're saying that, if you have a little piece of brass or a sliver of metal that found its way into the trigger, that is somehow a machine gun, which, of course, is just completely bogus. The ATF also admitted that the Bureau assigned 12 agents to collect AutoKeyCards from the public before being told to stop by their higher-ups, who thought it was a waste of money. The ATF employees also admitted to taking classes on convincing a jury of their testimony. On Tuesday night, the U.S. Attorney's Office requested that the jury be instructed that the AutoKeyCard is a machine gun, whether it works or not, and that they must rule if the men transfer the items and if the men's intent was to transfer uncut lightning links. They also wanted the judge to prevent the defense from arguing that the AutoKeyCard was not a machine gun. The judge was annoyed at the prosecution for springing the request at such a late hour. The judge refused most of the proposed jury instructions. The prosecution also asked for an hour and 30 minutes for closing arguments. The judge told the prosecution to limit their arguments to 45 minutes. The defense asked for the case to be dismissed. The prosecution asked the judge to deny the request. The judge did not deny the request, but said she would wait until after the jury returned a verdict. That verdict is now in, and after the jury deliberated for 5 hours. Mr. Irvin was found guilty on one charge of structuring. Structuring is a financial crime where a person structures to withdraw to avoid red flags. Withdrawals over $10,000 triggers an automatic investigation. In addition to the structuring charge, he was also charged with conspiracy. Conspiracy is an agreement between two or more people to commit an illegal act. The final 10 charges were 10 counts of transferring machine guns. Mr. Hoover was found guilty of 5 of the 8 charges, including 4 charges of transferring machine guns and 1 charge of conspiracy. Hoover was remanded into custody because the federal prosecutor stated she felt personally threatened by Mr. Hoover. Irvin has been in federal custody for the last 2 years and will remain in custody. The men will be held until sentencing on July 31st, 2023. And of course, here's the indictment, charges, and all that sort of stuff. So great reporting on John Crump's part, of course. Always straight to the point on that. This is a very scary situation, a very scary situation, because it paints a very distinctive picture about what these people are thinking when it comes to the enforcement of things like the NFA. I mean, you've got Wish.com auto sears for Glocks floating around in Chicago, in Chirac, getting used every single day. You hear automatic gunfire from Glock, full auto Glocks that have been converted, but yet, they turn a blind eye to that or whatever. But the minute someone talks about a piece of metal that, anyone could cut out into, a machine gun sear. Look, the definitions of these items, right, are very clearly defined, right? Something is what it is and it isn't what it isn't, right? If we're going off of that argument, then a block of raw aluminum could be considered a machine gun, or a piece of a window shelf or something made out of metal could be considered a machine gun, because someone with enough knowledge could take any piece of metal they find anywhere and turn it into an auto sear or what have you, right? Whatever item that they're deeming inappropriate. And I think that a lot of this argument, it even does fall on some really questionable Second Amendment connotations as well, because Bruin, again, changes things in a very, very distinctive way in terms of how these cases have to be brought forth and how, our government has to look at the Second Amendment when they're making laws. Well, in the situation of the ATF and all the DOJ and all these alphabet agencies, they're just making stuff up out of thin air as they go, right? They're not making laws. They're just saying, well, the law is what we say it is, and we're enforcing the law. Therefore, this is what we think. This is how we view the enforcement of the law. But in doing that, they're actually making a larger dragnet of potential, people that they can say, oh, well, you're, now that you have a brace on your pistol, you're a felon because reasons, even though they've been normal for 10 or 12 years and people have been buying and selling them for 10 or 12 years without any issue. And of course, there's not even a distinctive pool of data that points to one way or the other. It certainly doesn't point to the fact that they may have, increased crime in any sort of way. In fact, the defensive gun use statistics paint a very different picture when it comes to that sort of stuff. Far more people use firearms to protect themselves on a regular basis than they use them to commit any sort of crimes. And then when we do look at the crimes that are committed, with guns, when guns are involved, that's primarily in the cities, and it's usually gang violence. You see where I'm going? So they're trying to paint the average person that just happens to want to, use their guns for personal protection, self-defense, life and liberty, recreation, hunting. They're wanting to lull all of those people in with the same people that are using Wish.com auto sears and Glocks to cap their gang rivals in Chicago, every other week or every day or however often it happens, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say that's a perfect situation. We don't want to see people gunning each other down. We hate to see these things. But the left is really good at projection. They're good at saying exactly what it is they're guilty of in their arguments, right? So if they say nobody needs a gun or only these sort of people needs guns, what they really mean is they've identified that they don't trust themselves with a gun. So therefore, well, if I don't trust myself with a gun, I don't trust anyone else with a gun. I mean, I suppose I could understand that if you didn't want to arm yourself, you don't want someone else to be armed, and you think that is the way that you're going to make the whole place safer by just making everyone unarmed and unable to use firearms or whatever. But the point is, we'll get back to Matt Hoover. I mean, this is terrible. This affects his family. This guy's a family man, and this is a terrible situation to see someone in prison over something so stupid, right? The idea that just demonstrating that something, the shape of it, or demonstrating what it looks like, or using it for educational purposes. I mean, by the measure of what they are saying he is guilty of, you might as well say a drawing of an auto sear is illegal, or a 3D printing file of a lightning link, or a drop-in lightning link sear or something that's 3D printed is illegal just by existing. Then what they're suggesting is the knowledge of knowing how to do it is illegal. And that's just simply not true. The NFA says exactly what it says and everything it doesn't. It defines what a machine gun is and what it isn't, right? We have these legal definitions. They've been there for a long time, okay? So there's nothing new, right? All they're trying to do is dream up other ways to go after someone. And really what this is about is trying to make an example of someone so that they can go, hey, we're watching you, and these are the sort of things that we don't want people doing. Now, does that mean that they're going to go on some giant crusade and, start enforcing this on some crazy widespread level and start looking for even more stupid things to do for even more stupid purposes and to even more pointless end goals? I don't think that's the case, but it doesn't mean they would never try. And these people are very emboldened right now, and they're given the full latitude and backing of the United States government to do exactly what the Biden administration tells them to do. And there's a swinging door that happens, a revolving door rather, in politics and in the government, where the administrative state sort of stays in place, right? And then you have just the revolving door of politicians that sort of revolve around that administrative state. But when you look at things like the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ, the ATF, all of these alphabet agencies, they are fixtures of a larger government force, right, that is always there, right? When you talk about the deep state, when you talk about all the things behind the curtain, so to speak, they are the behind the curtain people that do the whims and bidding of their handlers, that pay their bills. I mean, that's just literally what you're looking at is organized crime, right? And I think it's setting forth a very dangerous precedence because moving forward, again, we could go into a lot more detail about things that are going on just in the world right now. You look at Tucker Carlson getting let go, from Fox News. You look at Don Lemon getting let go from CNN. I mean, no matter how you feel about that, the point is that the media, when we look at the way people view information, the way that they take information in, the way that they learn things, the way that they are given, let's just say the information that they use to determine, hopefully, to analyze the information to determine what type of view they're going to have on a certain viewpoint. We see that they are clearly engaged in broad censorship of people that are on my side of the fence, people that are, maybe let's just say more conservative, more even more middle ground, middle of the ground kind of people, centralist people like me that, I might have a wide range of views that encompass a wide range of different areas when it comes to a certain thought process or how I determine what my view is going to be on a certain situation. And you're talking a group of people who doesn't want you to be armed, not only with the knowledge to make your own decisions in regards to whether or not something is right and wrong, but they're also saying that knowledge in of itself is violence. Knowledge in of itself is power. Knowledge in of itself is committing a crime. Simply having knowledge of the tools at hand makes you somehow a criminal. Now, cutting them out and not having, the right licensing and all that. I mean, look, that is what it is, right? People can look at it any way they want, but whether or not someone bought an AutoKeyCard, or whether someone just got a file online, or whether someone is just a good machinist with a CNC mill in their basement and can just cut it out with a simple, AutoCAD file or something like that. I mean, look, there's a lot of different ways that someone could, let's just say, break the law, if you even considered it breaking the law. Again, I go back to Bruin, right? Bruin sets forth a pretty interesting precedence about how these laws have to be applied. The NFA, you have to remember, they're really allowing you, or they're forcing you to look at, they're forcing you to be like a moth to a flame and hyper focus on this issue of Matt Hoover and, you shouldn't be able to have a metal card that looks like an auto sear. But that's all a distraction, because at the end of the day, all of this stuff is illegal anyway. For them to, all gun control is unlawful. If you look at it under the Bruin standard, right? When we look at the historical tradition, text, and meaning of the Second Amendment, you didn't have laws that specifically banned certain features or certain guns or the type of gun you could have or whatever. It was always all related to, we don't want a certain person to have a gun or a certain group of people to have a gun, or hey, if you've murdered someone, you obviously can't take your gun to jail. I mean, you're gonna. I mean, there's, when we look at the previous Supreme Court rulings when it comes to, I think it was Scalia that said, well, reasonable restrictions on the Second Amendment. That we can have reasonable restrictions on the Second Amendment. Here's the thing. You're dealing with two very different versions of what someone considers reasonable and what someone doesn't. All right. What would be reasonable? Well, if you get caught, in a triple rape-a-murdercide, well, then you're not going to take your gun to jail. I mean, you're obviously going to be disarmed before you go to prison, if you even make it to prisons. I mean, so like, okay, is that to say, the Second Amendment means that you can carry your pistol in jail? I mean, like, come on. Again, reasonable restrictions. Like, that's reasonable. It's reasonable to disarm a crazy mass killer that has done something crazy, or to even end the threat completely. That's reasonable. But what they view reasonable and what we view reasonable are two very, very different things. And under the Bruin standard, this right here is a moot point, because there is no law in the text and traditions and the historical references of the Second Amendment. There wasn't a law that said, well, the government can have this gun, but civilians can only have this gun, right? So when we look at it under that guise, right, under that lens, it is the burden of proof is placed upon the government to provide the evidence that supports their reasoning for having a certain law. And the NFA, obviously, just because the NFA has been around as long as it's been around doesn't mean it's not an infringement. It just means that the correct legal situations have not been put into place to properly challenge it. Bruin could certainly pave the way to that challenge. So while it's easy for us to get emotional and to go, well, rah, 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 free Matt Hoover, tear the jail down. I mean, yeah, of course we want to get the guy out of prison. He's a family man. He's got a loving wife that cares about him. I mean, of course we want to free the man. But we have to do it in a way that is logical. We have to do it in a way that is effective. And we have to do it in a way that sets forth a very distinctive and important legal precedence moving forward that we can use as armor to push back every step of the way. And I can't stress that enough. I don't really think that the people doing these things, I mean, you look at the ATF as a whole, as a microcosm of society. I don't think the people that work for the ATF are just inheritedly evil, right? But it's a government organization. It's a microcosm of society. So you're going to have people in the ATF that love guns, and they probably looked at this and thought, man, that was a bad take. Why did we do that? Don't they know we have a PR problem? Don't they know how much people hate our guts because of this kind of stuff? Like, do you think y'all could slow your roll for a second so that maybe we could actually get some type of dang real work done somehow that actually matters to anybody? And then there's people that go, well, you know what? I've got this shiny badge and I've got a chip on my shoulder and I hate gun owners and I don't think anybody should have a gun, and we're going to use our office and the full capabilities that we can to absolutely squash these people as hard as we can. So there's always going to be both sides of the equation. But Just like law enforcement, any law enforcement agency. If you see somebody within your law enforcement agency doing the wrong thing and making you look bad, what do? You pull that person to the side. You tell them, right? You internally deal with the conflict, right? And if you don't think it happens, you're wrong. It does happen. When there's a cop shooting and they do some jacked up crap and it makes everybody angry and there was a bad call on the part of a police officer, you better believe that their people are going to pull them aside quietly and privately and be like, you better watch your butt because you're making us all look bad. So I think that those kind of internal pressures are important, but you are dealing with the feds. They operate under a completely different, type of ideology, right? So this is a scary situation, and it is kind of frightening to think that they can take this in a lot of different directions if they want. And this gives them a little bit of a legal standing to kind of go, well, see, the jury went this way on this particular issue, so now we can go this way when it comes to any other person that, oh, you have a block of metal in your carport. Are you going to machine that into an AR receiver that's full auto or something, or what have you, right? Oh, you have an old pair of tennis shoes in your closet over there. Are you going to use the shoelaces to make a bump fire mechanism for your M1 Garand and make your Garand shoot full auto with a shoestring? Okay, what, a shoestring is a machine gun? It's really all absurd. What it comes down to, it's just a mechanism that they are using to apply political pressure to people that they don't like, people they don't agree with. If anything, Matt Hoover is a political prisoner. Plain and true. That is a fact. The reason that they went after him is political reasons, not any type of real legality that anyone loses any sleep over. That's just the truth of the matter. I think that eventually, I really do hope that Matt, does end up getting the justice he deserves. I think that it was wrong what they did to him. I don't agree with what the jury found out. I don't agree with the way they handled this. And hopefully there's going to be some recourse for him, whether it's some type of I guess they have to go through and appeal it or something like that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even going to pretend to get into all of that. But there has to be some legal recourse for him to have this looked at a higher level again. Maybe something like this could even go to the Supreme Court and get shot down. So there's a lot of things, right? But like we've said in previous videos, and I think it's important to mention as well, is that often the accusation is the real punishment, not the perceived crime that they're saying you actually committed. That's the issue. Yeah, this will all get sorted out for him, I'm sure. How long? 1 year? 2 years? 5 years? How long is the man going to be away from his family while this is all getting sorted out? How much money is he going to spend defending himself? How badly, is his professional career going to be affected just from the bare accusation? And in this case, an actual, a charge that he was found guilty on. Even if it gets thrown out at a later date, the real damage is actually already done. So in many times, accusation is the real punishment. So I really feel for the Hoover family and for Mr. Irvin's family as well. I think this is terrible. And I hope that this comes to a peaceful resolution that makes everyone whole in some way. And I hope that the Bruin standard changes things in a way moving forward that will require that burden of proof on part of the government to be satisfied and met when these types of things are looked at so closely. They have to show us the historical reference, the historical traditions, the historical text that show where in the founding of our country it said anything about regulating firearms, right? That's really what this all comes down to. They're doing this in the way that they're doing it, and they're pushing the states to push state level gun control at such a level that they are because they know federally that their chances of getting any type of gun control through at the federal level are very slim to none. That's why they're using these sort of, loophole and in between things like abusing Chevron deference. And they're putting all of this pressure on the states. I mean, look at Washington, right? Washington State just got their assault weapons ban in, a very terrible assault weapons ban. Look at what they just tried in Colorado, right? I didn't want to make a full video about Washington or Colorado just yet, but look, everybody went and made a big stink about it, and then it got dropped in Colorado. All right, the folks in Washington were not so lucky. So the state level battles are super important, and don't lose sight of those. It's important that we really push hard for even if we don't live in a given state. If they've got something bad going on with the Second Amendment, we've got to ring the bell as hard as we can. We've got to organize. We got to get people together. We have to, fight this culture war, right? And at the end of the day, that's really what this is. There are two very, very distinctively different groups of people in this country that have very different views about how things should be handled. And it's coming to a head. It's coming to a point where, these people don't want to live with each other. They don't want to be around each other. They have drastically different views on how things should be done. And it's a very scary situation that's unfolding. This balkanization, the separation of ideas, this war of ideas. And, it's the mob. It's the mob coming after people. And it's a very scary situation. So I hope that things will end up, going well overall, but don't ignore those states battles, right? Just because there's a little setback like this, don't treat it like it's just some absolute defeat. It's a minor stepping stone. Look, Matt is going to spend some time in jail, but you know what? I have every confidence that this will get sorted out somehow. We have to look at every opportunity. So when a door is closed in your face, another door will open, Tucker Carlson, okay? I'm talking to you too. So don't take a minor setback as the end-all, do-all coup de grace, okay? There is always a path forward, and we will discover that path forward, and we will do everything we can to free Mr. Hoover, and, we're going to do what we can, and we're going to push forward. That's all we can do. So thank you very much for watching. Many more videos on the way. I hope you all have a great day. We'll see you soon.